you to register and attend. This will be a great opportunity to connect with the program team and past participants. For those of you in the Edmonton area, I really encourage you to register and attend. So Aiden, if you could pop a link in the chat to register.
I just did.
Thank you. And we hope to see you there. And for those of you based at the University of Calgary and University of Lethbridge, once the program teams are fully resourced, we'll be able to offer similar meetups there as well. Okay, shifting into the application process. So this is a multi-step process beginning with an application to the Lab to Market website with a deadline of Friday, August 29th. So as there are multiple programs accepting applications, be sure to select Alberta. If you have a health innovation, you can also apply to the National Health Cohort. And if you have an innovation that relates to oceans, you can apply there too. Following the application review, selected teams will be invited for interviews to assess fit with the program as well as the team dynamic. And what we mean there is between the applicant and the principal investigator. So these interviews will be held virtually in late September. Teams that are accepted will be invited to submit an application to MyTax in order to receive the $10,000 in funding. We want these submitted as soon as possible because there are administrative steps at each institution's research services office, as well as researcher sign-off. There's also sign-off by the industry sponsor, which will be either Edmonton Unlimited or Innovate Calgary. So Annie will speak to this process later. Let's take a look at the application form. This is an Airtable, and Aiden, if you could pop this in the chat, a link to the application. Thank you so much. And so I've got a screenshot of just the top here on the slide, but if you open it, you can see Alberta should be pre-selected. And if it's not, then you can select the cohort by adding the Add Cohort button. And you can also, as I mentioned, apply to other cohorts like the health cohort or the oceans cohort and rank your preferences. You need to indicate whether you've previously applied to or participated in the Lab to Market program, and you can provide further detail about this later in the application. So I want to touch on eligibility. So quite a bit of the initial screening we do when we receive applications is ensuring that applicants are actually eligible. So you need to be either a grad student or a postdoc and an Alberta post-secondary. And more specifically, you need to be enrolled at the time of program delivery or a postdoc within 5 years of your grad date. These requirements are to ensure that participating universities can administer the MyTax stipend. If you will graduate before or during the program, you will unfortunately not be eligible. Okay, moving on from eligibility, one of the first questions that you'll see is about the market problem. Okay.
Claire, we actually have one question in the chat.
Okay.
So Rira, she was asking about an information given on the website. She's asking, she's a new graduate, I understand, and she was curious if she's eligible because the program is for graduate students and postdocs.
Thanks, Aiden. Thanks for drawing my attention to that. So, Rira, you're correct. And this is unfortunately the case in Alberta. MyTax allows recent graduates, and many universities can process that. And so, the Lab to Market national communications on the website and elsewhere state that graduates can apply. But at the level of the university, not all universities are set up to process recent grads for MyTax stipends. And so, unfortunately, here in Alberta, our institutions don't. And so we'll not be able to accept recent grads. So I really regret that for Alberta students.
And thank you, John, for sharing a really good advice in the chat for future entrepreneurs. Yeah, this is very valuable, and thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, this is a great point. So I'll leave that for people to read, but we definitely want to encourage people to fail fast, and that's part of the philosophy of Lab to Market is engage with the market, if you learn that you're wrong about an assumption that you have, that's good information because it allows you to, pivot or change your business model to address that before you invest too deeply in a given path. So that's really great insight. Okay, so we're talking about the market problem, unless there's any further comments in the chat. Okay. One of the first questions you'll see in the application is about the market problem. So what I want to emphasize is it's about perspective, and you should be answering this from the perspective of who you think your customers are. What is their problem? And if you can, contextualize it by stating how severe it might be. What are the impacts created by existing solutions that don't work well? There's a lot of data available online, so you can do secondary market research. And you need to get into the root causes. It's not only about identifying the problem, but also communicating why this problem happens and what are the underlying causes for it. If you outline the problem well, you are setting yourself up for success for the next question, the introduction of your solution. This is where you speak to what it is, the product or service that you are hoping to provide to your customers. What's important here is you are communicating how your solution addresses each of the root causes that you outlined in the previous question. If you do that, you are positioning your product as the right solution. It becomes clear to the reviewers how your product or service addresses the problem. If you don't have that alignment, the reviewers might not understand or see that fit. So you need to get into details in the problem section about what the problem is and why, and then in the solution section, speak about how this addresses the root causes. We want to hear about what is novel, new, how your product sets itself apart from the status quo. So don't get too technical here. Speak to what you're doing rather than the how. In terms of the market size, we want to see how big the pie is, as in how much potential there is in the market. You see the acronyms TAM, SAM, and SOM, and you can Google these. They're total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and the serviceable obtainable market. What we are really hoping to see is that you start with larger market size numbers and that you can get from market research, and then filter this down to something that is more applicable based on what you think your customers actually are to the technology you're working on. The market size should reflect as close as you can what you're actually doing. So this is an indication for us about your understanding of who your customers are and a picture that you're painting about how big that is. For competitive landscape, we want to see that you've considered existing solutions and all the various ways that the problem is currently being addressed. So probably it's not being addressed well, but people are trying to solve a problem that they have. How does your solution compare? In what ways is it better than current alternatives? Talk about direct competition, essentially similar products or services to the same target market, as well as indirect competition. So a different or substitute product that can satisfy the customer's need and goals. Again, look at this from the perspective of the customer. Why might they prefer your solution and potentially switch from what they are using? What are the drawbacks of existing solution? And why is yours better? There's an opportunity to provide supporting documentation, so don't leave this blank. You can upload your resume, and I recommend that you also provide a short bio. So a short bio is very different than an academic curriculum vitae. We don't want it to be exhaustive. We want it to be concise. So 5 or 10 sentences are plenty to briefly summarize your academic and professional experience, then outline the project opportunity in non-confidential terms, and finally, your objective for lab to market validate. So that's it for the application. So we're now going to shift to my tax, and I'll invite Annie to speak. Annie, I'm going to give you remote control. Actually, Aiden, can I ask you to give Annie remote control? I seem to have lost my main control screen.
I think Annie should be able to share her screen.
Oh, okay, great. So, or no, I mean, she would actually I've got the deck going. Are you able to give her remote control access? Do you remember how to do that, Aiden, to give Annie control? Otherwise, I can move them for you, Annie.
Yeah, if you could do that, that would be great.
Okay, I'll move them. Okay, over to you, Annie.
All right, thanks, Claire. Hi everyone. I'm Annie Huang. So I'm based in Calgary, and I'm here to just help explain the MyTax side of the application. So I won't read this whole slide to you, but basically, if you're not familiar with MyTax, we are a national nonprofit. We've been around since 1999, so over 26 years now. And then what we do is we help support research partnerships between academia and industry. We also help support innovation projects, and then we also have special streams such as the Lab to Market one. Next slide, please. So if you are successful in being selected for the Lab to Market program, and you've been invited to apply for MyTax funding, it will be through the Business Strategy Internship Program, or BSI. As a reminder, this is meant for non-research projects. If you've applied for MyTax in the past or you've heard of MyTax, you tend to hear about research funding. This stream will actually be for non-research projects. Next slide, please. So in terms of how it works, this is kind of a slide just to show what it is in the nutshell. So the award will be $10,000 over a 4-month period. That means all of it will be used towards stipend. Depending on how your school administers the stipend, for some interns, it might be considered taxable. So for postdocs, for example, at the U of C, it would be a taxable stipend, versus for grad students at U of C, it would be considered scholarship, which is non-taxable. As a reminder, this is for non-research projects. And then how it works is there will be a partner organization. They will contribute 50% of the project's cost, and MyTax will contribute the other 50%. And again, this is open for students, in this case for grad students and also for postdocs. And it's for you to get a chance to work on, kind of testing out being an entrepreneur, seeing if there's a market for your technology. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of how it works and the structure, we always kind of talk about this triangle. So this is kind of known as the MyTax triangle. So in the MyTax triangle, there's an industry side and an academic side. So the industry side, this is their partner organization. So this is your non-academic partner. In this case, it would be Edmonton Unlimited. On the academic side, you would have your academic supervisor. So that's usually a professor at the university. And then you would be the intern. So either a master's student, PhD, or postdoc. So all three normally are in the triangle together to work on a project. And again, it's a 4-month project to do the BSI L2M project. Next slide, please. Okay, just reminder for eligibility. So it is for L2M under the BSI, it is for current master's or PhD students, or you could be a postdoc. For postdocs, the eligibility is within 5 years of your PhD graduation date. For students, you do have to maintain your status as a student for the entire duration of the project, meaning you cannot graduate partway through. The academic supervisor or the professor, they're your co-applicant or the technical lead, and whether or not they to tell if they are eligible, basically they have to be able to receive Tri-Council funding. So if they've held Tri-Council funding in the past, that means they should be able to hold MyTax funding. And then in case there are any interns who have more than one MyTax award, please note you cannot hold more than one MyTax award at the same time. So you can't have another award. If you have another project that overlaps with the L2M one, you can't do both at the same time. In terms of the limit for MyTax awards or MyTax internships, it has changed a bit since April 2025. In the past, every degree level used to have a certain number of units they were allowed. This has changed. So for master's and PhD students, they've removed the upper limit. Nowadays, you must have student status the entire time. You must have time in your schedule to commit to the project, and you must meet other eligibility. Now, that being said, some schools at their discretion might have an upper limit. They might choose to say, a master's or PhD is only allowed this limit. So check with your MyTax advisor just in case your school has any particular limits. Typically, master's students are up to 2 years and PhD is normally up to 4 years. That's usually the most common. Postdocs, however, is the same limit as before. So they are up to 3 years or 9 internship units. So basically for non-students like postdocs, they do have that upper limit. Next slide, please. So for the application process, in this case, because you're applying through the L2M stream under BSI, you would have that kind of triangle. So intern, academic supervisor, and industry partner. If you are selected, basically a My Tax Advisor would contact you to send you the application package and the link to apply on our BSI portal. A guide would